What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of High Mythology, the show where we get higher than the Eiffel Tower and tell you guys silly stories from mythology and folklore. Yeah, tonight we will be coming at you with the story The Little Gray Mouse, a French story by Sophie Séguin. Sophie Séguin! Way.
Oui.
Oh, wait. Okay, yeah. So now that I've got that out of the way, go ahead, Kim, and take it away.
Part 1. The Little House.
The little house for the little mouse.
The Little Gray Mouse. There was once a man named Prudent who was a widower and lived alone with his daughter. His wife had died a few days after birth of this little girl, whose name was Rosalie. Rosalie's father had a large fortune. He lived in a great house which belonged to him, not the state.
Not the state. I like how they have to make that clear. He owned it outright. It wasn't mortgaged.
Now,
he doesn't want to hear about refinancing.
This house was surrounded by a large garden in which Rosalie walked whenever she pleased to do so. She had been trained with great tenderness and gentleness, but her father had accustomed her to the most unquestionable obedience. He forbade her
Sounds like he treats her like a dog.
Yeah. He forbade her to positively to ask him any useless questions or to insist upon knowing anything he did not wish to tell her.
Damn, bro, that's not cool.
In this way, by unceasing care and watchfulness, he had almost succeeded in curing one of Rosalie's greatest faults. A fault indeed unfortunate, too common. Curiosity.
This
is the time. Okay. This is fault. Before women's rights.
I know. This
I would like to point that
out. Before women's rights. Yeah, she was a good lass, but she didn't stand a chance. She was curious, see? She liked to ask questions.
That's not a
She wanted to know how to read, so... I had to take her to a farm upstate.
Rosalie never left the park, which was surrounded by high walls. She never saw anyone but her father, and they had no servants in the house. Everything seemed to be done by itself. She always had what she wanted: clothing, books, work, and playthings. Her father educated her himself, and although she was nearly 15 years old, she was never weary and never thought that she might live otherwise or might see more of the world. There was a little house at the end of the park without windows, but with one door, which was always locked. Rosalie's father entered this house every day and always carried the key about his person. Rosalie thought it was only a little hut in which garden tools were kept. She never thought of speaking about it, but one day, when she was seeking a water pot for her flowers, she said to him, "Bonjour, father. Please give me the key to the little house in the garden." Her father says,
"What do you want with this key, Rosalie?"
So Rosalie says, "I want a watering pot, and I think I could find one in that little house." So her father says,
"No, Rosalie, there is no watering pot in there."
Prudent's voice trembled so in pronouncing those words that Rosalie looked up with surprise and saw that his face was pale and his forehead was sweating.
Oui.
So Rosalie says, "What is the matter, father?" In an alarm.
"Nothing, daughter, nothing."
Rosalie says, "It is my asking of the key which agitated you so violently, father. What does this little house contain which frightens you so much?" Her father says,
"Rosalie, goddammit, you do not know what you are saying. Go and look for your watering pot in the greenhouse."
So Rosalie says, "But father, what is there in the little garden house?" So her father says,
"Nothing that can interest you, Rosalie."
So Rosalie says, "But why do you go there every day without permitting me to go with you?" So her father says,
"Rosalie, you know what? You know what? God damn it, Rosalie, just stop questioning me. You know I don't like to be questioned, and all that curiosity is the greatest defect of your character."
Rosalie said no more, but She remained very thoughtful. This little house, of which she had never before thought, was now constantly in her mind. Rosalie says to herself, fuck, what can be concealed there? How pale my father turned when I asked his permission to enter. I am sure he thought that I was in some sort of danger. But why does he go there himself every day? It is no doubt to carry foods from some ferocious beast confined there. But if it was some wild animal, would I not hear it roar, or howl, or shake the house?
Or howl.
No, I have never heard the sound from this cabin. It cannot then be a beast. Besides,
yeah. Jesus. Is it bad? I'm picturing her smoking a cigarette with an extender while wearing a beret. This whole thing.
You know, this is before women's rights. She's 14. She's technically
She's
an
got
adult.
a cravat.
It's totally legal at this point.
She's 14, but she looks like 27.
27 looked like you were like 40.
Striped t-shirt.
Besides,
yeah.
if it was a ferocious beast, it would devour my father when we enter alone. Perhaps it is chained, but it is indeed chained, then there would be no danger for me. What can it be? A prisoner?
Oh. What can it
You're making
be?
it so hard to keep my accent. I'm like, I can't stop smiling.
If it were a man, I would have heard him smoking cigarettes and doing sad poetry.
My father is good. He would not deprive any unfortunate innocent of light and liberty. Well, I absolutely must discover this mystery. How shall I manage it? If I could only secretly get the key for my father, for a half hour maybe. Perhaps one day he will forget it. Rosalie was aroused from the chain of reflections by her father, who called to her with a strangely agitated voice. Rosalie, he shouted. Oh, excuse me. Rosalie shouted out. Here, father, I am coming.
Oh.
She entered the house and looked steadily at her father. His pale, sad countenance indicated great agitation. More than ever curious, she resolved a feigned gaiety in the indifference in order to ally her father's suspicions to make him feel secure. In this way, she thought she might perhaps obtain possession of the key in some future time. He might not always think of it, as she herself seemed to have forgotten it. They seated themselves at the table. Prudent ate but little and was sad and silent in spite of his efforts to appear happy. Rosalie, however, seemed so thoughtless and bright that her father at least recovered his accustomed good spirits. Rosalie would be 15 years old in 3 weeks, and her father had promised an agreeable surprise for this event.
Is it a pony?
No.
I bet it's a pony.
No.
No.
A few days passed peacefully away. There remained but 15 days before her 15th birthday. One morning, Prudence said to Rosalie,
My dear child, I am compelled to be absent for 1 hour. I must go out to arrange something for your birthday. Wait for me in the house, my dear. Don't fucking yield yourself up to idle curiosity, because in 15 days, you will know all that you desire to know. For I read your thoughts, and I know what occupies your mind. Adieu, my daughter. Beware of curiosity. Oh.
There you go, get into it. Prudent embraced his daughter tenderly and withdrew, leaving her with great reluctance.
I leave you with reluctance.
As soon as he was out of sight, Rosalie ran to her father's room, and what to her joy to see? That key forgotten on the table. Boom! She seized it and ran quickly to the end of the park, arriving at the little house. She remembered the words of her father, "Beware of curiosity." She hesitated and was upon the point of returning the key without having looked at the house when she thought she heard a little light groan. She put her ear against the door and heard a very little voice singing softly.
A lonely prisoner I pine, no hope of freedom now is mine. I soon must draw my last breath, and in this dungeon meet my death.
I can tell you've been listening to the wheels on the bus.
The wheels on the bus go round and round for eternity.
So Rosalie says to herself, "No doubt this is some unfortunate creature whom my father holds captive." Excuse me.
No doubt. That acting gets me every time.
Tapping upon the door, she says, "Who are you and what can I do for you?" The voice says,
Open the door. Open the door, Rosalie. I pray you open the door.
"Well, why are you a prisoner? Have you not committed some crime?"
No. An enchanter keeps me here as prisoner. Save me, and I will prove my gratitude by telling you who I truly am.
Rosalie no longer hesitated. Her curiosity was stronger than her obedience. She put the key in the lock, but her hand trembled so that she could not open it. She was about to give up the effort when the little voice continued.
Rosalie, think of all I can teach you. So many things that will interest you. Your father is not what he appears to be.
And at these words, Rosalie made a last effort. The key turned and the door opened. We continue to chapter 2.
Continuing to chapter 2. The fairy...
Detestable.
Detesticles. The fairy testicle. The fairy with testicles.
She is not. She is detestable.
Detestable testicles. Detachable testicles?
All right.
The fairy with detachable testicles.
Rosalie looked in eagerly. The little house was dark. She could see nothing, but she heard the little voice.
Thanks, Rosalie. It is to you that I owe my deliverance.
The voice seemed to be coming from the earth. She looked and saw in the corner 2 brilliant little glazing eyes looking at her maliciously. It says,
My cunning trick has succeeded. I have betrayed you, Rosalie, making you yield to your curiosity. If I had not sang or spoken to you, you would have returned the key, and I would have been lost. Now that you've set me free, you and your father are both in my power.
Rosalie did not yet fully comprehend the extension of this misfortune that she had brought upon herself in her disobedience. Wow. She knew, however, that it was a dangerous foe which her father had held captive, and she wished to retire and close the door. The little voice says,
Stop, Rosalie. It's no longer in your power to keep me in this odious prison from which I never could have escaped had you not waited until your 15th birthday.
At this moment, the little mouse disappeared entirely, and Rosalie saw with the greatest consternation that the key alone remained in her hand. She now saw that in her side was a small gray mouse who gazed at her with the sparkling little eyes, and then it began to laugh in a thin, discordant voice. The evil mouse says,
Ha ha ha, what a friend there you have, Rosalie. In truth, you amuse me very much, but it is lucky for you that you have so much curiosity. It has been nearly 15 years since I was shut up in this prison, having no power to endure your father, whom I hate, or to bring any evil upon you, whom I detest, because you are his daughter. Ha 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 ha.
So Rosalie says, Who are you then, you wicked mouse? The evil mouse says,
I am the mortal enemy of your family, my pet. I call myself the fairy with testicles, detachable, detestable. And the house suits me. The name suits me too. I assure you, all of the world hates me, and I hate all of the world. I will follow you for the rest of your life, and make your life a living hell.
Rosalie says, "Go away at once, you miserable creature. A mouse is not to be feared, and I will find a way to get rid of you." The evil mouse says,
We shall see, my pet. I shall remain at your side wherever you go.
Rosalie now ran rapidly towards the house. Every time she turned, she saw the mouse galloping after her and laughing with mocking air. Arriving at the house, she tried to crush the mouse on the door, but it remained open in spite of every effort she could make, and the mouse remained quietly upon the doorsill. Rosalie cried, "Wait a while, you wicked monster!" And then she was beside herself with rage and terror. She seized a broom and tried to dash it violently against the mouse, but the broom suddenly caught on fire, blazed up, and burned in her hands. So she threw it quickly to the floor and pushed it into the chimney with her foot. Least she should set fire to the house, Then, seizing a kettle, which was boiling on the fire, she emptied it upon the mouse, but the boiling water was changed into good fresh milk, and the mouse commenced drinking it, saying,
How exceedingly amiable you are, Rosalie. Not content with having released me from captivity, you also give me an excellent breakfast. Yummy, yummy in my tummy.
Poor Rosalie began to weep bitterly. She was utterly at loss what to do, and she heard her father entering. Rosalie cries, "Father, father! Oh, cruel mouse, I beseech you in thy pity to go away, that my father may not see you." The evil mouse says,
No, I shall not go, but I will hide myself behind your heels until your father knows of your disobedience.
The mouse has scarcely concealed herself behind Rosalie. Yeah, it's a she. When Prudent entered.
That makes the voice even darker.
I figure she just smokes like 15 packs a day. Like, it's deeper than your
the spawn
usual.
of Satan.
Okay, I fucking lost her a minute. The mouse had scarcely concealed herself behind Rosalie when Prudent entered. He looked at Rosalie, whose paleness and embarrassment air betrayed her fear. Prudent says with a trembling voice,
Rosalie, I forgot the key on to the little garden house. Have you seen it?
Rosalie says, "Here it is, father," presenting it to him and the coloring deeply. Her father asks,
What the fuck is up with all the cream on the floor?
Rosalie answers, "Father, it was the cat."
Meow,
Her
meow.
father says,
Le meow. The cat. Impossible. The cat brought a vessel of milk to the middle of the room and dumped it out there. Bullshit.
Rosalie says, No, father, it was I who did that. In carrying it, I accidentally overturned it." Rosalie spoke in a low voice and dared not look at her father. Her father says,
Take the broom, Rosalie, and sweep up the cream. Horrible way to absorb cream. I want you to sweep up the cream with a broom so you learn a lesson.
Rosalie says, "But there is no broom, father." And her father says,
What in the actual fuck? There was one when I left the house.
Rosalie says, I burned it, father, accidentally. Bye. As she paused, her father looked fixedly at her, threw a scratching, unique glance about the room, sighed, and turned his steps slowly towards the little house in the garden. Rosalie fell sobbingly, bitterly upon a chair, and the mouse did not stir. A few moments afterwards, Prudent entered hastily and his countenance marked with horror. He says,
Rosalie, you unhappy child, what have you done? You have yielded to your fatal curiosity and released our most cruel enemy from prison.
Rosalie cries, Pardon me, father! Oh, pardon me! She cried, throwing herself at his feet. I was ignorant of the evil I did. The father says,
Misfortune is always the result of disobedience, Rosalie. Disobedient children think they are only committing a small fault when they are doing the greatest injury to themselves and others.
Rosalie says, But father, who and what is this mouse? Who causes you this terrible fear? How, if it has so much power, could you keep it so long a prisoner? And why do you not put it in a prison again? Her father says,
This mouse, my unhappy child, is a wicked fairy and very powerful for myself. Oh, very powerful. For myself, I am the genius Prudent. And since you have freed my enemy, I can now reveal to you that which I should have concealed until you turn 15 years old. I am, as I said to you, the genius Prudent. Your dear mother was a simple mortal, but her virtues and graces touched the queen of the fairies, and also the king of the genii. And they...
I know.
Wow. Are those two in a relationship? Or
I have no idea.
And they permitted me to wed her. I gave a splendid festival on my marriage day, and then we just boned like all night long. Unfortunately, I forgot to invite the fairy with detachable detestables, who was already irritated with me for marrying a princess.
She was pagan to me.
Yeah. After refusing one of her daughters. She was so exasperated with me that she swore an implacable hatred against me, my wife, and our children. I was not terrified of her threats, as I myself had a power almost equal to her own. I was much beloved by the Queen of the Fairies, many times. Just many times. By the power of my enchantments, I triumphed over the malicious hatred of the fairy detestables.
Keep going, bitch.
A few hours after your birth, your mother was thrown out into the violent convulsions, which I could not calm. Yeah, and she started asking questions, so I had to throw her out in the snow. I had left her for a few moments to invoke the aid of the Queen of the Fairies. When I returned, your mother had moved to Lake Tahoe with her new boyfriend. The wicked fairy Detesticles had profited by my absence and caused her death. She was about to endow you with all of the passions and the vices of this evil world. When my unexpected return happily paralyzed her efforts, I interrupted her at the moment when she endowed you with the curiosity sufficient to make you wretched and subject you entirely to her power at 15 years old. But by my power, untied to that of the Queen of the Fairies, I counterbalanced this fatal influence, and we decided that you should not fall under her power at 15 years of age, unless you yielded 3 times under the gravest of circumstances to your idle curiosity. At the time of the Queen of the Fairies, to punish the fairy testicle, changed her into
turning into quite
mouse.
the lecture, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been a class with Dr. Your Father. Shut her up in the little garden house and declared that she should never leave it unless you voluntarily open the door. Also, that she should never resume her original form unless you yielded 3 times to your criminal curiosity before your 15th birthday. Lastly, that if you resisted once the fatal passion, that you should be forever released, as well as myself, from the power of the fairy detestables. With great difficulty, I obtained all these favors, and only by promising that I would share your fate and become a slave for the fairy detestables. If you weakly allow yourself to yield 3 times to your curiosity, I promise to solemnly to educate you in such a manner as to destroy this terrible passion, calculated to cause so many sorrows. For all these reasons, I have confined myself and you, Rosalie, in this enclosure. I have permitted you to see no one, not even one of the maids I procured with my powers.
Mine says not even a domestic.
Whoa, bro. All that your heart desires, and I felt quite satisfied in having succeeded so well with you. In 3 weeks, you will be 15, and forever delivered from the odious yoke of the fairy detesticles. I was alarmed when you asked for the key to the little house, which you've never been showed interest. I could not conceal the painful expression on my face. My agitation excited your curiosity, in spite of your joy and assumed thoughtlessness. I penetrated your thoughts. Bro, not without consent. And you can imagine my grief when the queen of the fairies ordered me to make the temptation possible by leaving the key at least once in your reach. I was thus compelled to leave it and facilitate by my absence to my own and your destruction. Imagine, Rosalie, what I have suffered during the hour of my absence, leaving you alone with this temptation before your eyes, and when I saw your embarrassment and blushes on my return, indicating to me, too, well, that you had allowed your curiosity to master you. I was commanded to conceal everything from you, to tell you nothing of your birth, or the dangers which surrounded you, until your 15th birthday. If I had disobeyed, you would at once have fallen into the power of the fairy detesticles. And yet, Rosalie, all is not lost. You can yet repair your fault by resisting for 15 days this terrible passion. At 15 years of age, you were to have been united with a charming prince who is related to us.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm reading that right. Okay. This
Cousins.
is a kind of weird frame. The prince gracious. This union is still possible. Ah, Rosalie, my dear child, take pity on yourself if you have no mercy for me to resist your curiosity.
Rosalie was on her knees before her father, her face concealed in her hands and weeping bitterly. At these words, she took courage, embraced him tenderly, and said to him, "Oh, father, I promise you solemnly that I will atone for this fault. Do not leave me, dear father. With you by my side, I shall be inspired with a courage which would otherwise fail me. I dare not be deprived of your wise parental counsel." Her father says,
You know, I could probably sum this up in 4 or 5 words. But I'm not. Alas, Rosalie, it is no longer in my power to remain with you, for I am now under the dominion of my enemy. Most certainly she will not allow me to stay by your side and warn you against the snare and temptations which she will spread at your feet all over your toes.
jam it in there.
Jammed right in your toe holes. I am astonished at not having seen my cruel foe before this time. The view of my affliction and despair would have, for her hard heart, An irresistible charm.
The little gray mouse stepped out from behind Rosalie and showed herself to the unfortunate genius in a sharp voice. She said,
I have been hiding all of this time behind your daughter's feet. I have been highly entertained by your recounts of my cruelty towards you and your family. It gave me great pleasure. Back here touching my mouse parts. Hearing your accounts to your daughter, that it induced me to conceal myself until this moment. Now say adieu to your dear but curious Rosalie. She must accompany me, and I forbid you to come with.
Saying these words, she seized the hem of Rosalie's dress with the sharp little teeth and tried to draw her away. Rosalie uttered a piercing cry and clung convulsively to her father, but an irresistible force bore her off. The unfortunate genius seized a stick and raised it to strike the mouse, but before he had time to inflict the blow, the mouse placed one of her little paws on the genius's foot, and he remained as immovable as a statue. Rosalie embraced her father's knee and implored the mouse to take pity upon her, but the little wretch gave one of her sharp, diabolical laughs and said,
Come, my pretty. It is a shame that you will not find the two irresistible temptations here. I must take you to them within the next 15 days.
The mouse pulled Rosalie relentlessly. Her arms were still clasped around her father, striving to resist the overpowering force of her enemy. The mouse uttered a discordant little cry, and suddenly the house was in flames. Rosalie had sufficient presence of mind to reflect that if she was allowed herself to be burned there would be no means left to save her father, who must then remain internally under the power of Detestable. Whereas she, where if she preserved her own life, there remained some chance of rescuing him. Rosalie cries, Adieu, adieu, dear father.
Adieu!
We will meet again in 15 days. After having given you over to your enemy, your Rosalie will yet save you. She then tore herself away in order not to be devoured by the flames. She ran on rapidly for some time without knowing where she was going. She walked several hours, but at last, exhausted with fatigue and half dead with hunger, she resolved to approach a kind-of-looking woman who seated at her door. If this bitch is half dead with hunger over one night,
I'm so hungry.
one meal missed,
I missed a meal.
bitch, please. Rosalie said to the woman,
I need some croissants.
or did she meet a woman?
Did she meet a woman?
As she approached a kind-looking woman who was seated at her door, Rosalie said to the woman, Madame, will you give me a place to sleep? I am dying with hunger and fatigue. Will you not be so kind as to allow me to enter and pass the night with you? The old woman said, How is it that a beautiful girl as yourself is found upon the highways? And what is with that ugly animal with the expression of a demon that accompanies you?
That old woman's hitting on her right out the gate.
Rosalie turned around and saw the little gray mouse smiling upon her mockingly. She tried to chase it away, but the mouse obstinately refused to move. The good woman, seeing this contest, shook her head and said, Go on your ways, my pretty one. The evil one has his followers and cannot lodge with me. Weeping bitterly, Rosalie continued her journey, and wherever she presented herself, they refused to receive her and the mouse, who never quitted her side. She entered the forest, where happily she found a brook, which she quenched her thirst. She also found some fruits and some nuts in abundance. Nuts. She drank, ate, and seated herself near a tree, thinking with agony of her father and wondering what would become of him during the 15 days. While Rosalie was musing, she kept her eyes closed as to not see the wicked little gray mouse. Her fatigue and the silence of the darkness around her had brought her to sleep, And she slept for a long time profoundly.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that was part 1
And 2.
and 2 of the... Well, I guess the episode-wise, so it's part 1 of the
Little Gray
Little
Mouse.
Gray Mouse. French folklore for you.
Yeah.
Tune in next week to see what will become of her dad. Will she be able to resist for 15 days, whatever the temptations are?
We will find out.
We will find out next week.
We will see.
On High Mythology.
Boop, boop.
Boop, boop. Yep. Yeah. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow.
Your reference is Fairytales with a Z. It's by Sophie Segar.
Sophie Segar. Sophie Segar. Yeah. Yeah. Let us know what you think. Give us a shout out. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, all those places.
Anywhere.
Instagram.
Anywhere you get your podcast.
Look for your podcast places. Let us know what you think. And tune in next week or Thursday. Yeah.
Yep.
For the
Part 2.
conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.